Midwest Whitetail is brought to you by Realtree, Hoyt Archery, Muddy Outdoors, Fuse Accessories, Trophy Rock, Frigid Forage, Scott Archery, Cabela's, Rocket Broadheads, Woods Zero Turn Mowers, Bloodsport Arrows, Redneck Hunting Blinds, Scentmaster, Yeti Coolers, TrailCamPro.com, ScentLock, and Nikon.
Thanks for joining me today on Midwest Whitetail. This is the first of our off-season episodes for 2014. And the off-season series runs from roughly now, mid-February, all the way through the first part of June each year. And we dive into a lot of topics that we don't have time to cover during the hunting season. We do a lot of stuff with land management, deer management topics, a lot more strategy breakdown, why we hunt certain tree stand locations, maybe entry and exit route strategies. We talk about really almost anything that has to do with hunting whitetails that we just can't cover during the season. So we're excited about the off-season series. It kind of gives us a lot of freedom. We can really touch on a lot of stuff that the viewers have been asking for. We're not tied to what the deer are doing. We can really jump around and cover a lot of different types of subjects. So this week, to kick it off, normally we would be in the woods hunting for shed antlers. But as you can tell, there's a lot of snow right now, and we just haven't had a chance to get out looking for antlers yet. We've been covered with snow for the better part of a couple of months now. So there hasn't been any antler hunting taking place. So we've got a little bit of ground to cover, and we'll be doing that over the next few episodes. But this week, I'm going to start off by talking about the main lessons that I learned from this past season. And I try to do that every year, to go back and reflect on my hunting season and really try to articulate or form very precisely some lessons that I've learned. And also in today's episode, we're going to go for a plant tour at Hoyt's plant out in Salt Lake City. And I had the opportunity to go out to Salt Lake City and speak at the Western Conservation and Hunting Expo. Cabela's had a sponsorship and a booth at that expo. I did some speaking at that event, and while I was there, I was fortunate enough to be able to join Jeremy Eldredge and the guys at Hoyt and take a look at their new factory and how they make bows and some of the exciting things that are taking place at Hoyt. So we're going to dive right into the episode talking about, first off, one of my big lessons from this past season. I killed a deer in the middle of October that we had nicknamed Curly. This was a 7.5-year-old buck, and I shot him at the very end of a ridge that over the years we've killed some bucks there during the youth season, the kids have. So it's a spot that we know fairly well, but I don't hunt it very often just because it's such a challenge to get back in there. What I mean by that is the entry route is usually easy for an afternoon hunt, so I shouldn't say it's hard to get back in there. Really what it is, it's hard to get back out of there because you have to go through a feeding area to get in, and obviously unless you're going to do something really dramatic and radical on your exit strategy, you have to come back out along the edge of that feeding area. So going in really isn't so difficult. On this spot, it's on the back edge of a feeding area, so you can walk in down the middle of that in the afternoon, heading into the tree stand. But where the real challenge comes is when the hunt is over and you're trying to find a way back out of there again. Unless you're going to do something really dramatic, like going off into the valley and taking a big loop back around through the bottoms and back out to your vehicle, it's going to be pretty challenging to get back out of this area without at least bumping some of the deer that have come out into that feeding area. So that's kind of the stage here. And the other thing that we want to talk about with respect to this one too is the fact that it's a narrow ridge, a narrow feeding area surrounded on, I'd say, 270 degrees by bedding habitat. So the deer can come from almost any direction there except directly out into the field. The only way that makes any sense here is for the wind to quarter and not blow directly out into the feeding area, but quarter right along the edge of the primary bedding area. So this is not a spot that sets up really well for what I would call no-brainer type hunting. You know, the spots that are so easy to hunt that you can hunt them almost every day without burning them out. This is just the opposite. This is one of those spots that you're going to hunt very carefully just a few times during a season. So you've got to get it right. The first time you go in there is probably going to be one of the few times that you're actually going to have success there. You know, if you try to hunt this spot several times, you know, unless you space it out at least a couple of weeks between hunts, the deer are just going to be too educated, and they're going to be reacting to the intrusion of you coming in and out, or in theory even catching you in the stand if the wind isn't perfect. Okay, so that's the stage for my hunt from the middle of October last season, and I knew that to go in there I had to have all the pieces in place. So that meant I couldn't just be winging it. I couldn't just go back there on an exploration mission. I had to know that one of the bucks that I really wanted to shoot was coming out back there during daylight hours. And that's obviously where the trail cameras come in. And that's a big part of our strategy now here, is trying to find bucks that are huntable, killable, deer that are moving during daylight in a fairly small area. I don't want to go into a spot where a buck has showed up one day and then 2 weeks later he shows up again. I want to see a pattern that's fairly repeatable, fairly consistent, with a lot of daylight activity in it, and then it's worth taking that that risk of going into a spot that's not easily hunted. So this is the kind of spot that you're just not going to hunt a lot. You got to time that first hunt and time it well, have all the pieces in place, take your chances, and sometimes you're going to be successful and sometimes you're not. Unfortunately for me, last year during October I was successful with curly, but I've got a lot of other spots like this too that I almost never hunt them. In fact, I don't ever hunt them until the pieces fall into place, like they did last October. And I haven't hunted that stand. I had not hunted that stand since 2010, so that's 11, 12. So I'd gone 2 years without hunting that stand just because the conditions weren't right. I didn't have a buck on a daylight pattern that I wanted to shoot back on the back end of that ridge. So keep that in mind. Not all of your stands are created equal. Some are a lot easier to hunt without bumping deer, and some of them are a lot tougher. And the ones that are really tough, either completely avoid them, take them off the list and leave that area as a sanctuary, or only hunt them when the conditions are perfect. Okay, next we're going to go out to the Hoyt plant in Salt Lake City, Utah, and join Jeremy Eldredge. Well, it's good to be here. Let's go in.
Glad to have you here.
We're at the Hoyt plant, and I'm with Jeremy Eldredge. He's in the marketing department at Hoyt, and we're going to take a tour today and look at how you guys do things here, how you make these great bows, and hopefully have a lot of fun along the way.
Cool. Yeah, we're glad to have you. We look forward to showing you our home and how things are done here. So
yeah, this is neat. So when did you guys create this facility?
This is a little over 2 years old. Mm-hmm. And we were just down the street, but we grew out of that facility and built this one. So everything, this was just, we were able to build it exactly how we wanted it, which was nice. It wasn't already built. We just had to make it our new home. We came in here and did it exactly how we wanted it.
You're not going to get any shortage of mounted trophies on the walls, and you get a real sense of these are hunters.
Exactly. That's what's fun about working here and being part of Hoyt, is we love bow hunting, we love shooting our bows, and that's what drives our passion to make better equipment every year. So
cool.
Hopefully that'll portray itself as we go through the factory.
No doubt. Where do you want to start? There's some places we can't go into, right?
Yeah, there's some places that are proprietary and we can't film them, but we'll just head through the factory. I'll show you everything I can show you, and then
I'll ask you questions along the way, and
cool.
We'll see how you guys do this.
Awesome. So this is the limb department here. We make all our own recurve limbs, all of our own compound limbs.
Put that ladder up.
Okay. In that room there, that's another positive pressure room inside of this area. That's the lamination room.
Okay.
So we want that positive to keep all the dust out of the lamination. But that's where they're laminating all the limbs by hand. So it's kind of cool in here because it's a good mix of high-tech equipment and skilled hand labor. You'll notice down here they're checking the deflection on all the limbs. So every limb we build gets hand checked for the deflection. And every deflection has to be exact. When you get a bow, you can pull it apart. Every limb's going to have the deflection written on it, and they're all going to be exactly the same. This is the machine shop. This is definitely one of the busiest areas in Hoyt. These guys, there's 2 or 3 shifts of work. They work 6 days a week. They're pumping out a lot of parts between the risers and the cams and the pockets, stabilizer parts, sight parts. They're really, really busy in here. So we've seen the limb department, we've seen the paint department, we've seen the machine shop, and then right behind them is the strings that we talked about earlier. So one thing you'll notice is everything kind of travels the same amount. The limbs come the same distance, the paint, you know, the cams. So we gained a lot of efficiencies when we moved into this building. Instead of having to move parts from one end of the building to the next, they're all right here. They all come the same distance and stage right here.
So basically it all circles more or less around the final assembly area.
The parts come in a kit. Someone stages the kit for them. They get in the riser, they get in the limbs, the pockets, all the bolts and hardware. And then they grab that kit and it just moves around this cell until it hits final assembly, where he puts the strings and cams on. And the guy on the end there, he's in charge of last final inspection. He'll give it an inspection, he'll pull it on the scale, make sure the poundage is right, and he's logged into that computer. So he'll scan the serial number. His initials will now be attached to that serial number forever. He was the one that gave it final inspection, checked the poundage, and put it in the box and shipped it out the door.
Give him a little sense of ownership.
Yep. So this is the front office here. This is customer service. These guys are on the phones with consumers and dealers all day taking orders. The accounting department. We got Randy Walk, our president, his office there. All the taxidermy that you see hanging is all from Hoyt employees. So this is the marketing area. We've got all our offices in here. This is the marketing war room. We have a lot of meetings in here where we talk about, you know, just events coming up and catalogs and ads and whatever. So, and then right in here, this is our studio. We do all our own photography in here when we photograph our products for catalogs, and we do video work in here. If you've seen the Pro Shop videos that we have on our YouTube channel, on our website, those are all filmed here, and we're gonna mic you up and have you do some videos for us too before you leave. So
good. That's it for this week. I don't really know what we're going to be doing next week on the show. We kind of take these as they come. The weather dictates a lot of what we do here on the farm. We'll start talking about food plot projects we've got coming up, and hopefully now with this break in the weather that's supposed to be coming over the next week, we can get out and do a little bit of shed antler hunting and bring you some of that action too. I appreciate you joining me. We'll see you right back here again next week for the next episode of Midwest Whitetail, and remember to always dream big.